I have a story here from BoundingIntoComics.com, the most hilarious woke pop culture fails of 2023. This is just a little trip down memory lane. Most of us, I'm sure, probably remember all this stuff, but it's always good to give a little refresher, if you will, because especially with the way that the 24-hour news cycle works, is this stuff moves so fast, so much seems to happen, that a lot of times you're like, man, I can't believe that such and such happened, and it feels like it was 10 years ago or something. Then you look and you see that it was actually only 6 months ago or something. It's just crazy. Then it almost seems insane, to be honest. But anyway, okay, we'll get to the first one. Disney on the ropes after multiple box office bombs. I mean, again, this isn't like a surprise that is on this list because, as they said, right here, Quantum Mania suffered an astonishing 70% drop in ticket sales, which is a huge number. Then you had Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Made good money overall. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse also managed to perform well, which arguably had more to do with Sony's production involvement. Kind of. I mean, it's also people just connect with it for some reason. Little Mermaid bombed. Then they start talking about Elemental and Wish. Although, they say that Elemental ended up making some money towards the end. Of course, the horrible Indiana Jones franchise or Indiana Jones movie basically collapsed the franchise. Haunted Mansion. You start talking about all these movies, they just did not do well at all. Rachel Zegler and Disney upstaged by the Daily Wire Plus Snow White trailer. Again, I remember this. I'm sure most of you remember this. It's the kind of thing that it's not hard to kind of upstage the way that some of the stuff looked from the Snow White movie just looked terrible. It just looked freaking terrible. It looked like a parody. Looked like an SNL skit, whatever you want to call it. They had the Daily Wire had their kind of version of Snow White and everything, and it just because it was just kind of a basic version, and that's what people want. They don't want all this politics crammed in there and all this other junk. Rachel Zegler did no help to anybody by constantly belittling the old movie and stuff. It was just ridiculous. She's not she's a girl boss. She's this, she's that. She's fighting for her own power. It's not a love story. It's not about romance. It's about power. It's about finding yourself and all this horse shit and stuff. So what? What are you talking about? And then they kind of hit on the Disney box office failures again by talking about the Marvels. This kind of does deserve its own section in a way because that movie, I do think that the Marvels is paying the price for so much of the crap that came before it. Like the movie wouldn't have made money regardless, but I mean it did terrible, absolutely terrible. As it says here, the film ultimately grossed a measly $199 million worldwide, 84 million domestically. It is making it one of the Disney's costliest and most embarrassing flops to date. It is unbelievable how bad this movie did. And the production budget was sky high. You're talking upwards of 300 million, maybe more. I mean, we won't even know the real numbers. Even when they release the real numbers in a few years or so, it's like we won't know how accurate that truly is because you can always maneuver money around and move this, move that. Anyway, when they talk about the Indiana Jones movie, it does say it gets upstaged by Sound of Freedom. I don't agree with that. I think the Sound of Freedom movie is a good movie. I would recommend it to people to watch. I would not recommend Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I think that movie was not very good, but that's my opinion. I don't think Sound of Freedom was like upstaging it though. I mean, I think that those are kind of separate things, but I mean, got to push a little bit of a narrative, I suppose. Whatever. Now they did say that Sound of Freedom managed to rank in $184 million domestically, which, if you remember, 199, like worldwide, was what the Marvels had with 84 million domestically. Sound of Freedom made over twice what the Marvels made. That's crazy. It says that here's a budget's 14.5 million. So you're talking what 25, 30 million grand total. It's hard to say when you're talking about budgets like that. A worldwide total of 250 million. So it did much better domestically than it did worldwide. But okay. I mean, then of course you compare it domestically. Indiana Jones 174 million, which was I guess that's where they're coming from with the whole upstaging. but I wouldn't necessarily put it like that because. But I mean, that's fine. The film, 381 million worldwide for Indiana Jones was crazy. Because to be quite honest, it's like it made double the money that the Marvels made at the box office. But most people would probably put them in roughly the same category, or even say that the Marvels was a better movie. I don't know. But anyway, uh, the next number or whatever, Hollywood goes on strike. Nobody cares. Thought that was pretty funny because it was largely true. Like you couldn't tell a huge difference, other than some people that I happen to know were like, "Oh, why isn't this TV show back? Why hadn't they had a new season?" Because it delayed stuff, it pushed some stuff back, brought out a bunch of game shows. You got stuff like what is it, Deal or No Deal Island. You've got a whole bunch of various other game shows that you're like, huh? But that's what they do when Hollywood goes on strike. Is they just start making a bunch of game shows, reality shows, and stuff of that nature because don't have to have scripts for that. Don't have, well, that's what they say, quote unquote. I mean, we all know that game shows, well, reality shows to be more specific, are those things are fake and scripted. At least the vast majority of them. But anyway, then you're here or there. Moving on, Ahsoka's feminist overtones kill the entire series. Talk about the season finale garnered just 863,000 viewers. Which I mean, I don't know where exactly how accurate these numbers are and stuff because you have to talk to Disney Plus or Disney, yes, specifically to find out. All I know is that's not good. 863,000 is not good. Even if the number is twice that, three times that, four times that, it's still bad. I mean, it's like this is Star Wars for Christ's sake. But anyway, Doctor Who's wokeness causes massive backlash. I hadn't forgotten about Doctor Who, but I did almost kind of put it out of my memory. Some of the unbelievably terrible, horrible stuff that they had in some of their specials or whatever. Just unbelievable. I mean, I don't even care if the new Doctor's black or is it whatever. I don't care about that. I got no problem with. Oh well, hey, he's got. They got to get a black doctor. They got to get a gay guy. Got to do this. Whatever. It is what it is. I can live with it because if it's good, if it's written well, okay, that's fine. I don't care. The guy don't have to look like me. He doesn't even have to be a guy. It could be a girl. I can get along with any of that kind of stuff. If it's good, if it's written well, if it's acted well, etc. I can completely get on board with any of that stuff. But it wasn't written well. It was written terribly. Just unbelievably terrible. And it goes on and it kind of gives a few examples and stuff, but they don't go into as much example as they could, to be honest, because I mean, there was some very cringeworthy stuff happening in there about, well, the doctor isn't necessarily a man or a woman, but then they're like, well, yeah, but the doctor also can't understand what it's like to be a woman and this and that stuff. And it's like, I don't know if I explained it well. Quite frankly, like I said, I almost blocked it out because it was so stupid. And then it talks about South Park triggering the woke meltdown with joining the Panderverse, which was good. If you haven't seen the joining the Panderverse stuff, I would recommend it. I don't know how big of a South Park fan you are. It's like I kind of grew up with it, so I mean, maybe it's like a cultural generational thing. I'm not really sure. But it goes on and it talks about Anheuser-Busch suffers a collapse after Bud Light Dylan Mulvaney endorsement. Look at that. I don't know how the hell are you going to sit there and be like, yeah, that's great. That's who we want in charge of our promotion. Like, ugh. But anyway, and it goes on and talks about they resulted in the backlash resulted in an eye-popping $27 billion drop in market value by the month of May. And it goes on and on. This was one of the people in charge of that. They're gone. Had some predictions and stuff to wrap up the article. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up myself as well. I'll link this in the description box. Read it for yourself. Check out some of the videos or articles or whatever, or read further of the article and stuff. Uh, this stuff was interesting. Like I said, it's all stuff that we basically knew. I mean, it's kind of like a refresher course and stuff. Although, like I said, I had kind of almost blocked out some of the Doctor Who stuff because that was so freaking terrible. Which, I mean, admittedly, I'm not a huge Doctor Who fan anyway. So it's like I'm not exactly the guy to talk to about that. But I will say at the same time that some of the dialogue and everything, like from Twitter or X or whatever, some of the clips they had shown on there were just so unbelievably terrible. It's like I could never watch the show. If I could be the most ardent fan, and these clips would have made me want to stop watching the show. Anyway, like I said, I'll link this in the description box and read it for yourself. Thank you very much for watching, and